Well, hello, and welcome to the third module instruction for Venture. And I will say that I feel like this one's a little bit trickier. So how I create this slideshow is I kind of go through the post test and look at all the questions that are asked, and then that's what I form my slides based on. So I want you to do this first before you do the module. This is not a business class. We're talking about finance, but I just thought this would be kind of an interesting direction to take the class. And there's going to be a lot of stuff in here that is even new to me. I don't have a business background at all. But as we talked about in a previous video, having kind of that entrepreneurial mindset is a great way to approach any situation as a student, as an employee one day, to being an out-of-box thinker, being someone that, is a critical thinker about things, trying new things. So I think all this information is good to know, even if you have no desire to be in business. So, and this slide kind of shows that. So creative thinking is an important part of an entrepreneur. And so they do that by challenging the usual, right? They're trying to think of something that's new and innovative. Think about the Elon Musk video that we watched. Part of the reason I gave you that is just that he is a person that has continuously thought of, I know I'm moving myself around here, of different ways to do things, right? Like, let's make cars out of that are powered by electricity. Let's privatize the space program. There's different things that he's thinking about that others haven't been willing to do. So he challenges the usual, and he's not the only example of that. Backwards thinking, that's kind of like thinking like what's your end goal and then all the steps to get there. So you think about like assembling a product, buying all the things to manufacture the product. You're kind of, what is your end goal? What are you wanting to do for consumers, whether a service or a product, and how are you going to get there? And then idea maps, similar to just kind of plotting out, something you're going to write. These are all really good creative thinking ways to generate ideas. So one thing that businesses have to do too is they have to do a lot of market research. So one of the best ways to learn anything is to find somebody who could be a mentor, someone that has experience. Now this says contact a mentor who has experience in the restaurant industry, but contact a mentor that has experience in any industry. If you're thinking about going into it, you want to start a coffee shop, talk to somebody that's run a coffee shop. You want to start I know somebody. When they were in college, they started a sock business. Kind of an interesting thing. And it wasn't even socks that they you might think, oh, they knitted them by hand or something. Oh, it was like socks that you would kind of buy, in a package, a little bit higher end socks. But so sometimes ideas come to people. And it doesn't have to be, you're 30 or 40 years old before you start those things. So finding someone who's knowledgeable is a great strategy in really anything. You can find a mentor for lots of different stuff. Creating an initial elevator pitch with limited information and starting to ask around for advice. So some of these are worded very closely to what they are on the post test. So I know it says her here, but I would kind of ignore that. You need to come up with some way to sell your product. And so that initial elevator pitch, we've looked at some of those in class. And then getting advice on, does this seem like a product you're interested in is a good starting strategy for creating business. And then the target market is who are you targeting with your product? Certain products are geared towards certain individuals, right? Like my kids, I bought them a Nintendo Switch this past year. I would say the Nintendo Switch is probably geared more towards kids. Some could say the PS5, though, could be geared more towards teenagers and adults, just based on the maturity level of a lot of the games. Can other people play it? Absolutely. I play the Switch, and I'm not a kid. Here's another example, and I may have mentioned this recently. I did a clothing thing online called Stitch Fix, and clothes were sent to me. Here's the interesting thing about that company. When it started, they only had women's clothes, but they've expanded because if they only sold women's clothes, obviously women are not the only ones that buy clothes, right? So they incorporated now men's clothing as well, and I think they may even have a kids line as well. So expanding your target market beyond what you're originally thinking You're trying to attract as many people to your business as possible. So you don't want to alienate, somebody. And by nature, some products that's going to happen. If you are into a certain hobby and needing something with that, then probably only people in that hobby are going to be looking for something like that. So, but knowing your market and trying to expand to reach the most people is important in your research. This was an interesting one. I've never heard this term before. So this is SWOT analysis. Actually, I feel like maybe I have heard this. So this is like a way that businesses analyze decisions that they make. And it almost really is like the pros and cons, the strengths and weaknesses of a proposal, or what the company sees as the company does well, what the company lacks. So they kind of make a list of their strengths and weaknesses, hoping to expand on their strengths, right? Continue to do those things really well, and then improve their weaknesses or eliminate their weaknesses. And then also it has opportunities, underserved markets for specific products. So like, where is there a need? Where is there something that nobody else is doing? And where can we get in on that? That's part of the way that you innovate a product, is that you start finding ways of something that nobody else is doing, or you end up doing that a lot better. Something that comes to mind is like Yeti has been a really popular brand, the coolers and things like that. So did coolers already exist before Yeti? Absolutely. But what they do really well is they keep things really cold for a long period of time, or drinks really cold, right? If you got like a mug or something. So they really push their market to reach people. I already had a cooler, but whenever I saw those things were on the market, it definitely is attractive to be able to keep things cold for multiple days, especially if I'm out camping and things like that. So underserved markets and finding ways, that's when really a product becomes important to people, is whenever nobody else is doing that. And then you have to also look at threats. We're going to talk about competitors here in a second as well. It's important that a business knows the consumer. So these words here might seem strange, but demographics is like age, gender, race, socioeconomic status. Like, who are your customers? Are your customers all women? Are they all teenagers? Are they all people from, incomes over $100,000? Those are going to that's going to tell the business like what they need to do. If your customers are only people that make over $100,000 a year, and you might wonder how they know that, but they do market research and they contact people. I actually did one for Stitch Fix just the other day. Like, they were conducting market research, and that would have been actually a great thing to throw in here. But I answered a bunch of questions for them, and like I could get a gift card or something if my name's drawn. But what they wanted to know is like, how much money do I make? How often do I use the service? They wanted to know specifically how I behave as a customer, so that they can change how they do things to better reach people like me. The psychographics, I guess, would be more like the mental side of it, like the mental desire to buy things or to shop. And then that kind of goes into buying patterns, like how often do you shop? And that was a lot of the questions that I had to answer, like, how often do you use our service? If we did this, do you think you would use the service more? If we lowered the price, would you use the service more? Because buying patterns are directly related by my own situation, but also by what the company is doing. If they raise their prices, I'm probably not going to buy as much. If they lower their prices, I buy more. But you can't just cut costs, without thinking about what your profit is. Companies also have to look at their indirect competition. I mean, they have to look at direct competition too. So I like this graph here. So like Domino's and Papa John's are direct competition, right? They both create pizza, but also McDonald's and Papa John's, or Domino's and Burger King, are indirect competition, because they both serve food. So like, if you're looking at going and getting dinner out, you could get Papa John's, but you're probably not going to get Papa John's and McDonald's, right? You're going to make a decision, and by choosing one over the other, you have chosen the competitor. And so that's an important thing to understand, that since it does, since the product fulfills the same customer need. So that's kind of an important thing to keep in mind. And most of the focus is going to be on direct competition, but indirect competition is also going to factor in there as well. This was one that has come up multiple times. So we've talked about fixed expenses, but these are things that don't change from month to month. Now, a salary, you might say, well, people get raises and stuff, but yeah, people get raises usually like once a year. So they're going to be a fairly fixed expense. Like I can tell you, like my pay, if it goes up, usually goes up kind of like towards the end of the year, first of the beginning of the next year, and then it stays that way for the rest of the year. So it's not like my pay is changing and constantly increasing. And then insurance, like what the company is paying either for insurance for their employees, they usually pay a part of that. But then also they might have to have insurance, for liability's sake for people that are coming in the building. And then advertising, these are kind of the fixed costs. They're not going to change as much as maybe like, product costs of to manufacture or whatever. We've talked about start expenses as well, necessary to start a business. They can cost a significant amount of money. So, you're going to start a restaurant needing all the pots and pans and the stoves. Now, if you transition from like one business to another, like let's say you close one thing and open something else up and it's in the same, type of business, then you might be able to carry those things over and use those. Or, a lot of times if a place closes down, whatever comes in there is maybe going to do the same type of thing. I heard that Bloomington is opening up a Dunkin' Donuts on Monday. That Dunkin' Donuts is going into a Steak and Shake out by the mall. If that's the case, now those are not exactly the same thing, right? Dunkin' Donuts kind of focuses on coffee and donuts. Those are not things that were served at Steak and Shake. But I'm guessing like the refrigerators that's in there, stoves or other things like that, those could be utilized. Seating could be used. Now there's going to have to be a lot of change, but they didn't choose to move into, an abandoned clothing store or something like that. So it probably saved them some money and cut their startup expenses in that area. So to determine all your expenses, really the best way to do this is to make a detailed plan of the process going through making a product step by step and keeping track of all the resources that are needed to create the product, and then factoring in the unit cost. So like I included here an assembly line and like an automobile. Think about all the parts that go together, and each one of those have a cost, right? Like if Ford is creating a car, they don't create all of the parts of the car themselves. They buy them from other places. So other places would make, the wheels, or they would make the steering wheel, or they'd make the parts of the engine. I'm sure they manufacture a lot of it themselves, but they're going to be getting those from suppliers, and they would need to know the cost of each of those things. So that's going to factor into the cost of the whole thing. Businesses are trying to increase their net profit. So there's 3 ways that they can do this. They can increase their prices, right? Because that's going to bring in more money. They can increase the number of, this is the number of cupcakes he sells, which I got this from the test again. They can increase the number of items that they sell, which is kind of the same thing. But if you're not willing to raise your prices, if your cupcakes are $1, right, you can raise your cupcake price to $1.50. You can also increase the number you sell, maybe like improving your advertising. Obviously you have to have buyers for those things, but you can increase that, or you can decrease your expenses. Cut the cost. Find if it's cupcakes, find somebody that sells you sugar or flour cheaper, and you could lower those costs and you save money. And that's a lot of what businesses do. They and to some extent shop around to who their suppliers are, and they want the lowest cost of those items. And this is kind of the last slide here. So preparing a sales forecast. So a forecast of weather, is looking forward to what the weather is like for the day or the week. So you can do this with sales, and you analyze your company and the market conditions. What are people doing? Are they buying this product? Do we see kind of like people are not doing stuff as much, especially like in the midst of COVID? Analyzing your sales is probably an important thing to do. Like people, are they buying less? Are they buying more? Think about like toilet paper. People have been kind of like buying more toilet paper. So I imagine toilet paper companies are trying to respond to that because their product has been really in high demand. So they use the SWOT analysis to do that, thinking about the strengths and weaknesses to be able to do that. Review past sales or past trends in the industry. Knowing we're heading into winter, what are the trends for this product is a kind of helpful thing to know. And then finally, estimating your future sales for a specific time period, especially leading into the holidays, seeing like this is kind of showing that monthly sales are going up here in the wintertime. You would expect that for products that are based on a season. So like winter coats, sleds, salt to put on your sidewalks, or snow shovels. You'd expect those to go up, or probably more people are installing swimming pools in the spring than, in the fall, even though like somebody just down the road is getting a pool right now. They're not planning on using it. But one thing I like to do is I like to ride my bike. And when it's wintertime, it's really, really cold and hard to do that. So I have a trainer, and I've been looking for a new trainer that allows me to ride my bike inside. I probably should have started looking back in the summer, because I probably could have got a better deal on one. Because now is the time when it's getting cold that everybody wants to do that, right? Like this is when people often buy treadmills or get a gym membership because it's harder to be outside. So seeing a trend in a product is helpful to make a prediction about what your business needs to do. So that's the last slide. Lots of stuff in here, like the SWOT analysis, that may seem kind of unfamiliar to you, but watch this first. And then I based all these slides on the questions. You'll get at least some of them, because I know you only get like 10 questions, but that should help you to go ahead and complete module number 3.